Hello and welcome back to the Cash vs. Trash podcast with your hosts, Rob and...
Demi, where we watch the highest and lowest grossing movie of each year from 1970 to 2021 picked at random, then decide if they deserve the title of either Cash or Trash.
That's right. And this week, we are, you might be a little bit surprised if you listened to last week's episode, we are talking about Wrong is Right.
Yep.
Also known as The Man with the Deadly Lens.
Only in the UK.
One thing
right?
said only in the UK, another one said in other English-speaking countries after it didn't perform well in the US, as Wrong is Right, and it was renamed The Man with the Deadly Lens because Sean Connery was the main character, and they wanted it to sound more like a Bond film.
That is a much cooler name.
Yeah, and they did... Even though it doesn't make sense. And they did like a Bond-style poster after all the US stuff, and that's what got sent out. So it looked like a Bond movie.
That's
there was
cheating.
Like two babes on his heels, and he's standing there with like, instead of a gun, it's a camera.
Yeah?
Yeah, because he's...
That's not appropriate for the movie.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Gets bums in seats, or in this case, it should get bums in seats. But anyway, if you're surprised at that, considering last week we said, I the jury, and I'm with you, audience, I am very upset because I was very keen on listening to, I was very keen on watching and then talking about, so you can listen to us talk about I the jury, which looked magnificent.
Yeah, well.
Unfortunately, I've got to let slip. There's been a running gag. Well, gags are supposed to be funny. There's been a running thing where we have pretended like we're not from Australia, even though we definitely...
you. I always knew it was extremely obvious.
I was trying to make some mystery and intrigue for the audience, even though every time there was an Aussie actor, I was like, Australia's own.
Yeah.
You can't get it here. And even when we used a very good VPN, which we were using already, Surfshark VPN, not sponsored, but Surfshark.
Shout out to them.
Yep, very good, very effective. Used to be ExpressVPN. They're also good, but Surfshark was a better deal.
Yeah,
so
it's definitely more affordable.
Yeah, so ExpressVPN, great. Surfshark, even better.
Yep.
So playing both sides. Didn't work through iTunes.
Yeah.
Like it when I got the two-factor authentication thing, it said it was like Santa Barbara, some shit like that, or San Jose, but iTunes was still like, no, you can't get this on the Australian server.
Yeah, so let's explain. We couldn't find this movie on... Yeah, but you're just talking about how we couldn't watch it on iTunes, but the reason why we had to go there is because we couldn't find it on YouTube.
I'm pretty sure that the people are smart enough to figure out that if we couldn't get it on iTunes, then we couldn't get it on normal watching
so it wasn't
things.
On any streaming sites, wasn't on YouTube, which most of them are.
I give the audience enough credit to go, they'll figure it out.
Well, I just like to explain things.
We are married, I'm aware of that.
So yeah, we tried out the VPN.
Yeah.
Well,
we already had the VPN.
Yeah, sorry.
But I never really used it for the laptop because I never took the laptop out of the house.
Yeah. We tried it so that we could buy the movie, but because all our payment things are Australian, it wouldn't really work.
And if there's anybody out there who's like, just use like a website, like in the interwebs where it's a little bit shadier, we tried.
Yeah.
This movie wasn't there.
Yeah.
We're not a pair of goody two-shoes. We definitely tried the illegal route and it didn't work.
Yeah, we tried a few things and we were like, okay, so if we have to go through this much effort, the audience probably doesn't want to do that.
Yes.
So we reevaluated. So either jury was number 113th on the list.
Yeah.
Out of 132.
Yes. And there was only 132. Not like we could only see to 132 like normal where it's the top 200.
Yeah.
It was, as you said, 113. This is 102. Wrong is right. We did have 131 on the list, Love and Money, but it wasn't released in enough countries to be a
Yeah.
fair fight up against E.T.
Yeah.
That leads us to a couple of... We went back and checked all the other lowest grossing, in quotes, movies, and we only made 2 mistakes. Bad Moon, which we just misunderstood when we were doing our research. That was one of our earlier episodes, so we just flubbed that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad we watched it, because I really like that movie, even though it's definitely trash.
Yeah.
Go back and listen if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
But...
And Fraternity Row.
Yeah, but there's...
Oh, yeah. For that...
For the
like,
70s...
Far back, yeah.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, so Bad Moon was probably our biggest mistake, but...
Yeah. Also, cinema releases worked different back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but and then you might be thinking, well, why would you jump from 113 to 102? And I didn't do the looking into it for that, so maybe you can explain.
Yeah, so E.T. was released to like over 20 countries.
Something like that.
In 1982. So we were trying to look for a movie that had at least been released in at least 10 countries that same year.
Mm-hmm.
Either Jury was, but we couldn't find where to watch it. Well, we couldn't. And then every other movie between that and Wrong is Right was only released in like 2 countries, or like some was just 1 country, or some were only DVDs, and then some movies were released in the US in 1982, but released everywhere else like a year or 2 later.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really count for this year.
Yeah. And
so, yeah.
You might be thinking, well, if they made more money than Either Jury, then why didn't you just watch them because they did better with less to work with? And to that I say, shut up. It's our
well,
podcast.
It's still not fair because, yeah, E.T.
Yeah, E.T.
had a wide release.
Still holds the record for most cinema releases, so like longest window of 81 weeks. So obviously it's not like a fair fight, but it's just, it feels better this way.
Yeah, we're only human.
Yeah. Anyway, after that 5 straight minutes of us telling you guys to stay off our backs, Wrong is Right is the movie, as we've said multiple times now, that we're talking about this week. Mm-hmm. It is a comedy/satire, and from 1982, and 102 on the list.
Yep.
So that is still that's down pretty low still.
Yeah, yeah.
100 movies in 1 year, and this is 102 movies in 1 year, let's say.
Yeah.
And this is at the bottom. That's pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
Starring Sean Connery as Patrick Hale.
You probably know him for being James Bond.
The original.
Yeah. He's also in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and a movie called The Rock.
Yep. Very famous movie. He's been in a lot of shit. He's Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Sean Connery. Rest in peace. He died a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was 90.
Wow.
I think. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, do. Stir up stuff for the podcast. But he was pretty old. Like, he lived a long life. Very, very, very famous man. Very Scottish.
Yeah.
George Grizzard as President Lockwood.
You might recognize him from Flags of Our Fathers, Bachelor Party, or The Addams Chronicles.
I didn't recognize this guy.
I don't know any of those movies.
Flags of Our Fathers, I'm pretty sure it was a war movie. I can't remember. I don't know the other ones. But we're young.
Yeah.
Young and fresh. If you're older, or if you're... don't get me wrong, I like some old stuff. I like F Troop. That's a really old show. That should get me some cred.
MASH.
And yeah, I watched a bit of MASH. And The Goodies, if you like some British comedy. I like The Goodies. Kitty Kong is one of the most famous ones. There was one, I can't remember what it's called, but they used black sausage as a weapon. No, black pudding as a weapon.
Black sausage.
That was a different movie. So yeah, don't get me wrong. We're not one of those, well, Demi might be, but I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, if it didn't come out before 1990, then I haven't heard of it. So, anyway, Robert Conrad as General Wombat. Excellent name.
Yeah, you might recognize him from Jingle All the Way, Flying Misfits, or Centennial.
Jingle All the Way is a classic. Fight me. And it was directed by Richard Brooks, who's known mostly for being a writer. He wrote Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Yeah.
Very famous movie, to the best of my knowledge.
So, the budget of this movie was $10 million.
Back in 1982, which, as we worked out with E.T., it would be approximately $30 million today.
Yep.
I think it was like 3 times the amount. Let's say at least more than 25 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this only had 0.5 less of a budget than E.T. Keep that in mind.
E.T. isn't a very effects-heavy movie.
Way more than this, though. I suppose they mainly use puppets.
Yeah.
Yeah. True. Just shows what you can do with a budget.
Well,
like what you can do.
$500,000 difference and some creativity and some like real
passion,
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, domestically it grossed $3.58 million and international wasn't available. I'm not sure. Like, this was released in other places, but the information just wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, obviously, the worldwide total is the same, $3.58 million. Its opening weekend made $1.4 million, and, yeah, that's pretty much all the information I have.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all we need.
Yeah.
This is going to be a short one.
That's all that was provided.
Yeah. So, it definitely didn't make its money back.
No way.
Did we find a Rotten Tomatoes score?
When I tried to look, I couldn't find it, but then we saw somewhere.
One came up on YouTube, was it, when we were watching?
Something like that, yeah.
But you can't trust that.
Yeah.
But if you couldn't find one, you couldn't find one, but I think on IMDb it was pretty low. I think it was like a 5. And normally on IMDb everything is like a 7 or higher.
Yeah.
It's not as trustworthy, but still. What is this movie about?
This movie is about a renowned TV journalist who is thrust into a plot involving a terrorist, a king, and the President of the United States, who are all vying for 2 briefcases possibly containing nuclear warheads. As he endeavors to uncover the truth, he is monitored closely by the CIA and their arsenal of spy satellites.
Demi can read very well.
Yeah.
Something happened with the printer, and like some of the words didn't print out right.
Yeah, I'm not just an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes.
We promise. That obviously it's a summary, so that sums it up. But that is that's the broad scope of the movie. But I don't want to say don't watch this movie, because there's some pretty interesting stuff in here. But if you just want to listen to us talk about it and then go check it out, like listen to the spoilers and stuff, go ahead.
Yeah.
The plot isn't strong enough for us to really muck it up or anything like that. It
is very loose and a bit all over the place.
For the first 45 minutes at least, a lot of shit just happens and just gets thrown at the screen.
Yep.
It just sort of bandies about for a while, and you don't really know what's gonna happen, and not in a good way. Not like,
no,
what's gonna happen? More like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, you don't know which direction it's going in.
Yeah, and look, full disclosure, normally we watch the movie that we're talking about twice.
Yeah.
We'll watch it once and just watch it, and then we'll watch it a second time the night before we record, and we'll take notes.
Yeah.
We didn't watch this a second time.
No.
I feel like we didn't need to, because there's not that much to talk about.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything in this that I was like, ooh, I'll need to make a note of that and look it up. That didn't happen.
Yep.
Which has never happened for any of these movies. The only other movie that we haven't watched twice for this was Captain America Civil War. I'd seen that like half a dozen times already, and you'd seen it once or twice already. So that was a little bit different. And I'd watched videos about it and looked it up and stuff well before the podcast came around.
Yeah.
So that was the only other time. And this time, it was just because, holy shit.
Could not bear to sit through that movie again.
Yeah, I didn't want to pay the $3.99.
Yeah, not in the same way as like Bad Moon or Cousin Bet, because...
There was something to them.
Yeah.
The acting really stuck out with some of the bits in Cousin Bet. And there were things that were done right or wrong. Or wrong is wrong. Right or wrong. There was nothing there. I tried to make it a joke. But I just trailed off. But there was something to talk about.
Yeah.
And there were things that happened that you and I were both like, oh, wow, or... that was shit.
Yeah.
But in this, it was just, and then the movie's still
yeah, that's
going
the
on.
thing. Like, for Bad Moon, I had so much passion for it. Even though I didn't like it, there was still some passion there.
And the
but
choice.
For this, and the choice, yeah. For this, I could not care less about this movie.
Yeah.
And the best thing you've ever said to me was, let's not watch this movie again tonight.
I sat with it for like 2 or 3 hours, like, I really don't want to watch this movie again. Not in like, probably not in the same way as you, where you're like, fuck this movie, and everything it stands for. I'm like, man, I don't need to watch it again.
Yeah.
I just don't need to. The things that I want to talk about, I can remember easily, and there's not much. So,
yeah. Exactly.
With that,
Yep.
is there anything else you want to talk about before we get right into spoilers?
No.
Spoilers don't really matter. You know, it's a satire, and it's meant to be funny, and we'll get into this in the actual spoiler part and whatever. But it's not very funny.
No.
Because the things that it covers back in 1982, it was like, isn't that ridiculous that the government would be this way and the CIA would be this way and this would happen in the Middle East. And now we're like, this is a documentary. What are you talking about?
This is just what happened, kind of.
Well, we'll get into how accurate some of the stuff was, how eerily accurate. If you like... I can't compare it to anything.
If you like boring movies, watch this.
It's not...
That's my opinion.
I'm gonna go out and say it. Like, you can probably figure out what rating we're gonna give it, but it's not terrible. It's just that I think that, and we'll talk more about this when we do the comparison to E.T. at the end, but I think that, and it wasn't made for an audience of 2022.
Yeah,
this was 40 years ago. This is a very different time in the world. So obviously a lot of things aren't going to translate, or it can't translate because it's pretty much a different language.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work with some of the things, with how it's supposed to be funny.
This movie didn't age well. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think as a comedy, it aged like milk. As a commentary and a satire, like a satirical take on the world and America and politics, it aged like the finest wine. And you could watch this and be like, wow, there were people who had their finger on the pulse back then about things that are just... They make very serious, gritty TV shows now about stuff that is joked about in this. That is supposed to be like, what a laugh, mate! Having a fucking laugh. What a joke! And now it's like, yeah, we know about that.
That's reality.
Yeah, that happened. It was happening while this movie was being made, not as part of the movie, but yeah.
Alrighty.
We'll see you in spoilers. All right, you heard the jingle. This isn't a fucking drill. It's spoiler time.
Yeah, spoilers.
I don't know if I want to talk too much about the ending like I normally do.
Okay.
Because I have a lot to say about that ending.
True, yeah.
So I might save that. But I usually like to be like, this is what happens.
Mm.
You know what? We'll just talk about it now.
Okay.
And we can talk about the rest later. But because I can't say half of it now and half of it later.
Yeah.
So the ending of this movie is Sean Connery plays Patrick Hale. We'll use character names if we can remember them. Patrick Hale is a TV presenter, but he's like goes into the battlefield and
Yeah, kind of like a reporter.
Yeah, like an in the field reporter, like I was gonna say Anderson Silva. That's not his name. Anderson Cooper.
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper. He's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar. Goes. Pretty sure that's his name. I'll correct myself now when I'm editing if I'm wrong. He, has been in battlefield and like been out in the world and shit like that. He's very much like that as far as I can tell. I don't really follow American political stuff.
Yeah.
But like that's the vibe I get from what I know of it. So anyway, he helps save the day because the 2 briefcase bombs have been stolen by the terrorists and are going to get set off somewhere in America. And right at it doesn't even really explain how, but you figure out what's going on. They find them in New York City, strapped to one of the 2 twin towers at the top.
Yep.
And then they disarm the bombs, and the CIA, the head of the CIA, knows straight away how to disarm the bombs. And he does it, and he shows the bomb disposal guy how to do it. And then Patrick Hale says, awfully convenient that we found those with 4 minutes left. And he's like, oh, just luck and whatever. And then, so just stay with me. A possible terrorist attack with the epicenter at the Twin Towers in New York City, which was actually a false flag operation by the CIA, which then led to the president at the time deeming, and it was blamed on a terrorist who was trying to get the bombs, who then said, this country, and they made up the country, thankfully. They didn't name a real country. It was Hagrab, I think. I read that it was a fake country. So if there's any Hagrabians out there, sorry, that's just what the internet told me. The president of the United States says that country and that terrorist leader who has taken over the country now has nuclear bombs, weapons of mass destruction. And the US invades that country, and that's how the movie ends.
Yep.
Stop me if that sounds familiar to you.
Yeah.
This movie came out in 1982. Now, again, the only difference between this and the very real event of 9/11 is that the terrorist attack failed.
Yeah.
Completely. Like the attack mostly failed in 9/11, other than killing a lot of people and causing a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And that's not to like downplay that. That was a fucking horrible and tragic event. But I mean, their plans were grander than what they achieved.
In their minds, it didn't succeed the way they wanted it to.
Yeah, by any stretch of the imagination. It just killed a lot of people and traumatized a country or several countries for a long time.
Yeah.
Of course, that was 21 years ago now, so times are a bit different.
Yeah.
But it's just so fucking insane to me.
It's eerily similar.
A, the Twin Towers. B, it was actually the government did it, which I'm not going to come out here and be like, oh, the government actually did it, but there's enough shady shit to know that there was a lot of mishandling of beforehand of that attack.
Yeah.
Which you can't deny. So, dodgy stuff going on there. I'm not one of those people who's like, Bush did 9/11. Because I just don't believe that, like,
But it's like like you said, there's enough out there for it to be like questionable.
Yeah, and it's strange, the circumstances that surrounded it and all that sort of stuff. So you'd couple those two things together. Then the fact that the president, who was a pretty tame president, was like, nah, we're going to war. They have weapons of mass destruction. We're going to wipe them out. And instead of telling the world what really happened, Patrick Hale goes, I'll take your money and your exclusive.
Yeah.
And that's how it ends, with him jumping out of a plane to go down with the soldiers and get the exclusive.
Yeah.
That's why he lies to the world. So covering up the media,
Yep.
which was very easy for any government to do, and all that stuff. It's just like 19 years, or the movie would have been made in 1981, so 20 years before it happened.
Yeah.
This guy, Richard Brooks, I know it's based on a book, but we're not here to talk about the book, so I don't know how the book ends. But if the book ends the same way, that's even further back, that they predicted like exactly what happened.
Maybe a time traveler made this book. And then the movie. It is so weird.
Yeah. And that's the only good thing about this movie.
Yeah.
Just straight off the bat. The like actually proper good, and why you should go watch it, is to be like, wow, that's really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. That they could predict that something like this would happen back then. And it's meant to be played off as like, how silly is that? Yeah, that's ridiculous. That you know, that's like what the CIA is doing taken to the umpteenth level, and now we're like, yeah, bro, that's just what they fucking do.
That's what happened.
And it starts off with like, spy satellites, your every move monitored. What if this was a reality? And I'm like, mate, they did even better than that. They put the spyware in our hands.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not a conspiracy kind of guy, but it's pretty obvious when there's all these face apps. So you're just handing over your information. And I'm not like, ooh, boo-hoo about it. I'm just like, that's just how it is.
And it's not a conspiracy because, like, I listened to a podcast and then there was also that Netflix.
Not a conspiracy. Let's. You said this is not a conspiracy, but you listened to a podcast, so go ahead.
A podcast, and there was that Netflix thing about it where they, no, there's a few things that I've listened to where they can track somebody's every single move, where they were and what time they were.
To Live and Die in LA.
Yeah, and then there was
also listened to that.
The Don't Fuck with Cats.
Yeah, I haven't watched that. That one took them a bit longer though.
Yeah, but it was just regular people doing it. It wasn't.
So, To Live and Die in LA, excellent podcast.
Yeah.
The journalist, just kind of similar to this, and a private investigator get this guy's, I think Google location, and they trace him minute to minute, and follow his exact path, even so much to know that he walked behind a service station, and in several different places
there for a bit or whatever.
So, and this movie's like, wouldn't it be crazy if in the not too distant future, they can track you by They can track you by satellite, and I'm like, bro, it happened.
Yeah. I guess that's why, like, now this movie doesn't really wow.
Yeah.
It doesn't wow me because I'm like, that's our lives.
One really interesting thing that they got sort of wrong, but I think it was just too over the top. When this started, I thought it was going to be pretty funny because it starts off with like just this crazy montage of people being extremely violent. And then it turns out that it's a TV show where you can get situations set up where you can like be violent.
Yeah.
And without consequences. So like it gets set up where some actors will mug you and you can fight them and they'll like let you hit them and stuff, but not too bad. Or you can get a shotgun with blanks and somebody has squibs and you can shoot them and the squibs will explode and it's like simulating a woman murdering her husband.
It's like people get to live out their violent fantasies.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, is this like a precursor to the Purge franchise, where like I could totally see that. Where and then obviously the movie changed, but still, that's such a fascinating concept to me. That like imagine if they had like because the Purge is a pretty interesting concept when it's done right. Of getting your violence out one night a year. I could totally see them doing like a prequel set in the 80s where
the lead
violent
up,
TV. Yeah. I think that would be really interesting because it's played off in a similar way where it's like it's good for you to get your violence out.
Yeah.
I think that's two good things in this movie.
Yeah.
One is very good and one is underutilized.
Yeah, and I thought the movie was going to be about that, and I wish it was, but I completely forgot about that stuff in the beginning because it's so insanely different from what the rest of the movie is about, I guess.
And it's for a movie that's like wants to shock you with like the violence of things, and it does at the start with, we normally talk about the story last, but we'll sort of go backwards this time. Who cares? Or just bounce around. It doesn't really matter. There's the explosion where the CIA spy / journalist woman is killed, and you do see like a charred corpse, and you're like, oh shit. Like, you thought that she was going to be a main character.
Yeah.
I didn't think that far, but I thought that she was going to come back, certainly.
Yeah, it took
and she's
me by
just
surprise.
wiped out.
Yeah.
Me too, don't get me wrong. But, like you said, the other explosions in the movie...
Yeah, like
aren't very good.
The suicide bombers, is that what they were calling them?
They didn't name it, but that's what they're meant to be, I think.
So they're like strapped bombs to their waist and then jumped in front of crowds and blew up and whatever, but it looks like they just strapped fireworks to themselves, and then it was just like pew pew, like sparks flying. It didn't look like a explosion that would kill the person that's delivering that. It looked like they were surviving it, but they were suicide bombers.
Yeah. But then there's the three who jump out of the plane, including the woman who's been like, not the lead terrorist, but there was her and the other guy who gets arrested after he suicide bombs himself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, they don't die.
But the three who jump out, their explosions are huge, and they definitely die. Yeah,
and their explosions are also just in the sky, though, like next to the building. But they don't actually cause any damage.
Because they're supposed to just be displays of loyalty, but you're just killing off.
You're just killing yourself in a dramatic way.
Yeah, it's very strange.
And even like the suicide bombers, did they even kill anyone around them? Or they just made a scene?
I think they just made a scene. And at first I thought, oh, okay, they didn't have it in the budget for a big explosion there. That's fine. But that person's dead now. But when the guy does it at the president's rally or whatever, and it's like this little explosion, and you're like, oh yeah, but then he's like goes to run away.
Yeah.
When I'm like, wouldn't he be torn to bits, or if it wasn't a big explosion, he should be like cut nearly in half. Except he gets up to run away and Sean Connery tackles him to the ground. And I'm like,
what the hell?
What the hell? Yeah, what the hell was that?
I don't know.
But there was one pretty good effect, and I couldn't really find any info on who did it, but there was a miniature explosion effect where it sort of half tricks you into thinking that a nuclear bomb has gone off.
Yeah.
And it looks, and for good reason, a lot like the scene in Independence Day where the miniature, obviously that's done better because it's 14 years later, but also it's made more to look specifically like an actual city, whereas this, you could pretty much tell it was a miniature.
I picked up close to the end that it was a miniature, but for the most part of that scene I was like, oh, okay.
I picked up that it was a miniature, and then I was like, again with the bombs, I was like, oh, maybe that they just did the best they could.
Yeah.
But then it turns out it's maybe it was meant to trick us, but again, we live in the age where they can make entirely CGI characters look pretty good.
Yeah.
And interact with human characters. And at the end of it, it shows like the bare bones of the skyscrapers, and you're like, oh, well, yeah. And then the people are all standing over it, and they're like, that's what's going to happen if a nuclear bomb goes off. And the president's like, fuck.
Yeah, maybe I'll just step down.
But he doesn't.
Yeah.
He goes to war. Sean Connery, great.
Yeah. Everyone else didn't really do much.
No, everyone else was pretty serviceable. I think that he had one really good scene that I really liked, and it's a good message, which he's telling his editor of the station that they need to pay the $2 million, if not more, for the bombs, because it's $1 million each. Because there's an arms dealer, and who fucking cares? And the editor's like, oh, that's too much money. And he goes on this big speech rant about there was an interview that he wanted Patrick to do with a prisoner who was on death row, and he paid $100,000 to the prisoner and more money to the prison and all that to do the interview.
Yeah.
And he's like, is that news?
Yeah.
You just wanted more views and stuff like that. That gets us nothing. And, he gives a few more examples, but that one stuck to me, that he's like, what about when this horrible thing was happening and you paid the criminals? It was pretty much like that he's like, you put money into the pockets of bad people to get us attention.
Yeah.
So why can't you do it now for something good?
Yeah.
And he, goes on this big rant about like, they need to tell the truth, and that's what this is about. But then at the end,
doesn't. Yeah.
He falls into that trap.
Yeah.
I think they could have lent more into, he's like, if I do this, they'll kill me, they'll kill my editor, they'll kill everyone who was there that day, the cameramen, the teleprompt people will all just walk in front of cars or die of heart attacks. Or like the king who the CIA killed hours before the president gave the order to kill him.
Exactly.
They were just like, we're just going to take care of this, and then we'll manipulate the president into saying, do it. Because I'm like on the CIA guy's side for so long.
Yeah, same.
And then when it comes out that old mate's assistant did it, he was working for the CIA, I'm like, holy shit.
Yep.
What a dog. It just...
Yeah.
But this is all like in the back half of the movie. The first half of the movie, who gives a shit about anything?
Yep. I had, I'm going to be honest, I had no fucking clue what was happening the first half of this movie. And this movie goes for 2 hours.
Yep.
So the first hour, I'm lost as.
And you feel every second of those 2 hours.
I just could not pay attention to this movie. Yeah, but Sean Connery, his character is pretty interesting. And then I think the president was a good character as well.
The president... as soon as I saw him, I was like, that reminds me of George W. Bush. And then the events that unfold are like what happened in real life. It's weird, man.
Yeah.
But I think this was made... Ronald Reagan would have been in office during this time. Apologies, America, that I don't know when all of your presidents were, but I think I saw that, and that sounds about right, because he brought in a lot of stuff and did a lot more of like as far as I know, pushed for a lot more of like protect America's interests and get out in the world and stuff like that. Or that's the story that goes these days. And I've heard people say that they're still living in Ronald Reagan's America, like the things he changed.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe Richard Brooks knew something. Oh, maybe. Of course, Richard Brooks knew something we don't.
Yeah, those are kind of the main points of the movie.
Yeah.
We don't really have anything else to talk about.
Yeah, and you might say, oh, well, you guys didn't take notes. Believe me, mate. Just fucking believe me. This episode would be exactly the same. Actually, we'd be more angry if we had watched it again and taken notes, because all the things that I can remember, I'm like, yep. I remember this movie. Maybe that's a testament to that this movie was done well, but boo fucking who, it's not very good.
I don't think it was done very well because yeah, like I say, for me personally, I was lost for most of the movie. And then when you start realizing how creepily similar this is to a real life event, then I was kind of interested
Yeah.
in it. And that was only the very end
The
of the
last
movie.
the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
One pretty cool thing, which is very strange, is the vice president is a woman?
And not only a woman, a black woman.
Yes. Bold choice.
Yeah, and even she says, like, if you step down, there will be a black woman
As president.
as president.
Yeah. And I was like, I think that the satire there is he's pretending to be like a real nice guy president. And he's like, look, I have a person of color and female vice president.
Yeah, I'm ticking
which
all the
is like,
boxes.
Joe Biden, I think, isn't the vice president at the moment. Kamala, I don't know how to say
I would not
it.
have a clue.
Kamala Harris. Some people have been like, it's kind of like borderline virtue signaling, being like, well, I'm not that bad. Look at my vice president.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as like, well, I'm not that bad. I'm not a racist. I have black friends.
Yeah.
I see jokes about that all the time. And this reminds me of that.
Yeah.
This nice guy, air quotes, president, who his opponent, played by, can't believe we haven't talked about it, Leslie Nielsen, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Is he dead?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he died. He was very old when he died. Amazing. Totally, like, played it straight here.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I've only ever known him as a funny guy. But it's because of his roles like this, and he is funny in this, but he's a very straight man kind of character. Not like as heterosexual, but as in the comedy terms of like just straight down the line, no goofy antics some of the time. But he was in Airplane a few years after this, and he's exactly the same, but more serious in that. That's where the Don't Call Me Shirley comes from. Sorry. This movie's making me boring and bored. He is like this Texan who's like, we have to take it to them, and get down there, and get up there, and take it to those motherfuckers. He doesn't really talk like that. But,
Not at all.
No. And then at the end, him and the president are on the phone, and he's like, you did it. You finally did it. Good job, man. Good job. And the president's like, we're not going to take it no more. And he's like, yeah, get in there. Show them what for. Good job, Lockwood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm shaking my head. Nobody can see it, but I'm just shaking my head furiously. That's it. I have nothing else to say about this as a movie on its own. We will give it its verdict. I'm sure you've figured it out, but I'm giving this movie trash.
Trash from me.
Sorry, I didn't give you any chance to say if there was anything else you wanted to say.
No, I'm done with this movie.
Okay, so yes. A trash and a trash.
Trash, trash, trash.
Who's the third trash? Because I'm trash and
E.T.
you're trash. And the movie's trash. We gave E.T. cash.
No, I'm saying E.T. as in E.T. voted this movie trash.
Hates this movie.
He's our imaginary friend.
From when our parents got divorced. I was going to say spoilers. Shock, we're siblings.
Oh my god. No.
Yuck.
No.
All right. So, that was our review chat about Wrong is Right, also known as The Man with the Deadly Lens, which again doesn't make sense because he doesn't kill anyone with it, and he doesn't cause any problems with it. Well, he does, but for bad people. Yeah. Now that I realize it skipped over a bunch of the plot, but it doesn't matter. We talked about what we were interested in. Yeah. All the stuff with the king and the terrorist. Who gives a shit? Yeah. I will say, it did turn out that, like, without a doubt, the terrorist didn't do it. Because he's like, what bombs? And he's holding the briefcase bombs. Yeah. So I'll just say that. Yeah. Anyway. With the lowest grossing episodes, we like to do, or part 2, we should say, we like to do a little bit of a comparison, maybe analyze for about 2 to 5 minutes about why maybe the highest grossing was the highest grossing and the other movie was as down the low on the list as it was, even though it was released to X amount of countries and very easily could have made somewhere near that amount of money.
Yeah. And for this movie, I am surprised that it wasn't more popular than it is.
Yeah.
But I suppose I'm saying that knowing 9/11 happened,
yes,
people then wouldn't have known.
What I would compare this to in the modern times is Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
Which I haven't gotten around to watching, mostly because it looks very funny, but it also looks like a fucking drag.
It's just depressing with the current state of the world.
That you watch the trailer and it feels very much like this, but with stuff that's happening now, so you can laugh at it. But 20 years from now, when everybody's like dealing with, well, like when our kids and us will still be alive, as dealing with the effects of the shit that our generation and the generation before ours and before theirs didn't do right.
Yeah.
We'll be like, this movie isn't very funny. It's just sad.
Yeah.
And it's like that with this movie. So I think that also satire is a really hard genre to get right.
Yeah.
So there's parody and satire. And parody, to the best of my understanding, is usually like, it's funny and goofy. That's like Scary Movie and that sums it up.
Yeah.
It's usually taking the piss out of something you like, but it's done to accentuate what you like and maybe just poke fun at some things, but it's done from a good place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Satire is like, look at you, you fucking idiot. Change this. This is crap.
Yeah.
Here's what you are.
Yeah.
This might be a funhouse mirror pointed up to you, but it's not that much. This is like 2 degrees to the right or 2 degrees to the left, and you would look like this horrible fucking mess.
Yep. Exactly.
Dickhead.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
This movie made me mad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much a good explanation, like the funhouse mirror.
Yeah. But not
example.
An extreme one.
Yeah.
It's like if this was this much different, you would be that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's supposed to make people think, and while it can be funny, it's supposed to make people go, oh, more people than I realized feel this way.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of it. And I do know that, parody is supposed to come from a place of admiration while being funny.
Yep.
And satire is supposed to be a bit more mean. Like, not to get political. Well, it's not really political, but it's not political at all. I don't know. That guy, shout out to Meat Canyon. I think it was his second channel, Papa Meat, made a video called In Defense of Amber Heard that went for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I started watching it because I was like, this guy surely can't be serious.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's satirical.
Yeah.
It's poking fun at those idiots who are like, she was right and Johnny Depp was wrong. That's a good example of it. It's hard to do it for a movie because after a while you're just like, this is a drag.
Yeah, when it goes for so long.
And even back then it seems to have come across.
Yeah.
Whereas E.T. is evergreen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. Do you know what that means?
No.
Timeless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stays green forever. Like green grass.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's much more fun, like, even though it does still have, that fear of the government aspect, it's still a fun, lighthearted movie that has a happy ending.
Yeah, but it's fear of the government because you're harboring an alien.
Yeah.
Not fear of the government just because they were bored and they wanted to start a war.
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted to disrupt a possible enemy to the state, so they killed a guy and then pinned it on someone else and then started a war and pinned that on them. Whereas in E.T., it's just like, what's going on over there?
Yeah.
What's
you
that
got an
little
alien
guy?
in your house?
What's that little guy doing in there? We tracked him here and we'll get him back, thanks.
Yeah.
Little bit different. And
yeah, definitely.
E.T. is just such a good movie. And again, I hadn't seen it in a long time, as we talked about in part 1. And I was like, oh, this movie's not very good. Let's get this over with.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to show our kids when they get a little bit older.
Yes.
They're probably a bit young for it now. They'd be probably terrified by E.T.
There were bits where I was terrified of E.T.
Yeah.
Snap that little neck.
Yeah, so it's a movie that you watch as you were, like, when you were a kid, and then you want to show your kids. And then, yeah. Whereas this, no way.
Evergreen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's we say this every time. It's not hard to see why. Actually,
we don't say this every time.
Last time was 1977. I think Sorority Row could have... Fraternity Row could have done better.
Yeah.
Than it did.
If it wasn't originally a class project.
Yeah.
Then it would have been probably more up there. Yeah.
I think the choice could have done better if it was just you tweak a few things.
And there's been some highest grossings where we were like, this should not have been at the top. Example 1, Mission Impossible 2.
Oh. Garbage.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep.
That's that. Yeah, not hard to see why E.T., one of the most famous and influential movies of all time, beat everything else, and why Wrong is Right, which clearly didn't get the message across, and now it just makes me uncomfortable, or it makes anyone uncomfortable, really.
Yep.
Didn't.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, do you want to tell the people where they can find us?
Yep.
Do the outro?
Sure thing. If you want to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do that by checking out our Patreon. We've got a few tiers there. Check them out. We also have a Twitter and an Instagram, and the handle for those are @CashVersusTrashPod. And our listening apps are Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and you could also find us on YouTube. The links will be in the description, so you can just follow them there.
Yep. And if you want to get in direct contact with us, the best place to do that, I mean, you can DM us or whatever through Twitter or Instagram, but the best place would be to email us at cashversustrashpod@gmail.com, all lowercase. It'll come straight through to me. So anything, feedback, if you want to shout out, you have to pay for that. If you want us to, like, if you have anything that you think we didn't address about a movie that you noticed, let us know. We might do a bit of if we get enough of those, we might do an episode on it.
Yeah. Just tell us your thoughts.
Things that are people who are smarter than us noticed.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the end of the episode. That's the end of 1982. Next week, we're sticking with the 80s. We're doing 1989, Batman.
Yep.
Yeah, the highest grossing movie of that year, and I can say already, well deserved. This is one of the movies I'm most keen to cover.
Yeah.
I really, really like this movie. I haven't seen it in a while, so let's see if it holds up.
Yep.
Anyway.
Cool. Thanks for listening.
This has been the Cash vs. Trash podcast.
See ya.